We're here to discuss European involvement in the war in Afghanistan. Is there support for it? How strong are the feelings against? Most important, perhaps, do people feel this is a just war, a necessary war? And do Europeans actually know why their forces are fighting and dying on foreign soil? I'm joined in London by three guests. Joan Humphreys from Dundee in Scotland belongs to a military family. Her grandson, Kevin Elliott, aged 24, was killed in Afghanistan just 4 months ago. Monty Shadle is here from Berlin, an anti-war activist whose brother served with German forces in Afghanistan and Kosovo. He wants the troops to come home. And David Ornus, who lives in Lyon in France. David is a retired French officer who promotes public support for French soldiers, believing there's a lack of respect for what they do. Joan Humphreys, I'd like to start with you. You've obviously suffered a terrible personal loss from the war in Afghanistan. Perhaps you could start by giving us a sense of how difficult that's been to process over the last 4 months.
The pain is something I wouldn't like anyone else to go through, and I'd love to be able to get the troops all home, alive and well, because it's horrific going to Lynham to see your grandchild coming off a plane.
Now, of course, you are part of a military family. I understand that your son, Kevin's father, has a different view.
Totally. He is trying to find a reason for Kevin's death, and he feels that it's important that we stay in Afghanistan and win, which will give him some reason for Kevin's death, which is something he's searching for.
Monty, let me move on to you and explore a little bit public opinion in Europe towards the war in Afghanistan. You're from Germany, of course. The Germans have recommitted troops to the war in Afghanistan. How's that going down in Germany?
We have
the situation in Germany where in surveys 60 or 70, even 80% are against the war in Afghanistan and the involvement of the army. But the Bundestag repeatedly decides to send troops there. In the past, we have not managed to have big demonstrations against the war. But in the last weeks, after the Kunduz massacre, where German officers caused the deaths of 142 people, there's a new openness in the media. And people now report and debate about how we can get the troops out.
David?
Yes.
Perhaps you could give us the view from France.
The view from France could be a little bit different because the public opinion, globally speaking, support the troops, support the action in Afghanistan. But this is something which is not in the daily newspaper every day. The public opinion is a little bit far of what is happening in Afghanistan. It's a far country, it's a NATO war, it's a kind of preventive war, so we are not offensive in our territory, and like in major country now, our military are volunteers, so according to main people, they choose their job and they assume it.
It seems the question at the heart of public discontent in the United Kingdom and across Europe is a simple one. Why are European troops fighting in Afghanistan? Is there a simple answer to that?
Not at all. There is absolutely no reason for any of the troops being in Afghanistan. I mean, it's an invasion. This is the 21st century. Why are countries still invading each other?
Do you not feel that there is any merit in the argument put forward repeatedly by the politicians that this is a war designed to protect our streets from the threat of terrorism, going back to 9/11 and what happened in the United States?
The roots of the conflict in Afghanistan and the previous one in Iraq are the 9/11s. And one of the answers of what we are fighting in Afghanistan is that we are fighting here to protect our streets in the future. That's one of the answers, but that's not the only one. Then there is a lot of other answers that should be brought all together.
Es gibt keinen Grund, weswegen Besatzungssoldaten der NATO in Afghanistan sind. Es sei denn,
there is no reason why there should be NATO soldiers in Afghanistan, apart from political reasons. We want to ensure our influence there and to make profit there. I think those are the only reasons.
Das ist aus meiner Sicht der einzige Grund.
There's no humanitarian reason and no reason in terms of anti-terrorism. The occupation only creates new terrorism rather than solving the problem.
Durch die Besatzung nur neuer Terrorismus entstehen, nur neuer Terror entstehen. Damit wird kein Problem gelöst werden.
What about then the question of moral responsibility. Foreign countries, along with the United States, went into Afghanistan over 8 years ago now. And this is a country that we know has problems with human rights, dire problems with poverty, political problems and the like. Do we have, as a Western collective now, a moral responsibility to see the Afghans through, to see the Afghan nation through to some sort of democratic and peaceful and stable future?
We mustn't forget that it was America in particular, Britain too, that funded the Taliban and Al-Qaeda against the Soviets. So to pretend we're going there to do something good, it's just not true. They don't care about the Afghanis. I think it's all to do with money, to do with profits for big companies. It's the only reason I can possibly think, and it's one I can't accept. I can't accept my grandson died for some very rich man to get richer.
Your grandson died for freedom. If I hear your argument, that I respect, I would just ask you what would have been your position in 1939 when the German invaded Poland.
I think in 1939, if I had been Polish, I would have objected strongly. I don't really see, one, it's wrong to invade. Two, I don't see why other countries have to jump in. I mean, it was a very, very different situation in 1939. It was close to us. We could have been attacked. And I think, yes, you defend your own country. But Afghanistan's so far away. Al-Qaeda and Taliban have never attacked this country.
Oh, yeah?
No, they haven't. No, they haven't. There's no proof that the London bombs were anything to do with...
And yet, Joan, the point is, there is an engagement in Afghanistan, and to simply leave would, at this point, create a very dangerous power vacuum.
No, because Britain and America were so keen to get the Soviets out. They, as I say, they funded Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, anyone they could to get the Soviets out. Now, the Soviets had done a certain amount of reconstruction, there's no doubt about it, much more than we've done. They had schools, they had roads, they had so many different things. Hospitals, and this just hasn't happened in 8 years. I think there's about 6 roads, and that's the total sum of reconstruction.
Wenn es denn wirklich Freiheit,
if it was really about freedom, democracy and rebuilding, then from a German point of view, 80% of the expenditure would not be going on waging war, on bringing the military to Afghanistan, with only 20% used to build schools, streets and wells. The reality, after 8 years, is that we put crazy amounts of money into war and only a little into democracy and freedom. In the end, this war shows that you can't build a democratic society through military means. It will always stay a society where some people suppress others and force them into a certain system. It won't work.
David, there must be another way, says Monty. What do you think is the appropriate way out of Afghanistan?
Everybody is a little bit forgotten that sometimes to achieve peace you must fight. From Lebanon to Bosnia, from Sarajevo to Phnom Penh, if you want to achieve peace, you have to fight. One of the problems in Afghanistan is that I won't say enemy, but the opposite side is everywhere inside the population, and so doing this, they are responsible for all collateral aspects of the conflict that you are mentioning, because they do fight in a manner which makes them completely inside the population when they want. When they don't need the population, they get out. And who face the collateral damage? The innocent.
Therefore,
es ist aber nicht akzeptabel. Und wenn David
It's not acceptable. David, earlier you invoked German history. Germany invaded Poland in 1939 with the justification that we had been attacked. The USA invaded Vietnam with the justification that they'd been attacked.
Die USA haben Vietnam überfallen mit der Begründung, sie sind angegriffen worden. Wir haben jetzt
And now we've invaded Afghanistan on the grounds we've been attacked. Well, with Vietnam, as with Germany invading Poland, we know now the justification was a lie. In 10 to 15 years, we'll realize that in Afghanistan, it was a lie as well.
In 10 oder 15 Jahren spätestens wissen, auch in Afghanistan war es eine Lüge.
Well, according to me, just with these points, there is a reaction which is not there is no balance in this kind of reaction. If you point with your finger the collateral damage, you should point also the other side's barbarian activity.
But the question would be, should we face or accept the death of our own people, European troops, in support of human rights and issues that are not of our making or of our society? Why should Europeans have a responsibility for what happens in Afghanistan?
Would you suggest that we just do the three monkey? We don't see, we don't hear, we don't speak?
Yes.
According to me, no. I was serving with NATO forces in Bosnia, with French forces in Ivory Coast, and with NATO again in Haiti. And when you saw children of your children's age dying in your arms, you think, I think personally, that's my personal point of view, you must give a hand and help them to upgrade the situation. But
they were totally different wars. I mean, the majority of Afghans don't want any of the 143 coalition countries there. They just don't want them. Well, I'm not proud my grandson died for his country. He didn't die for his country, he died for his friends. And if you speak to the majority of British servicemen, they will tell you they are there for their friends. They don't care about Afghanistan. They just don't, they're not interested.
Who knows?
And well, because I've spoken to hundreds of soldiers, obviously.
According to me, a grandson died for Afghanistan's freedom, even if you can't accept
David,
this.
what does Afghanistan's freedom mean to you? What is the end game? What would be an acceptable solution? What would define success?
Well, I don't have to define it. We have governments, we have NATO forces who decide what should be the Afghanistan situation. We are all in a democracy.
But for you, you've expressed views that we are there for Afghanistan's security.
I don't have to give my personal opinion.
What do you believe should be the end objective in Afghanistan that would allow European and other forces to leave honorably?
It's not my position to give you what I think, what could be the solution to make a end of Afghanistan war. We are all in democracy in Europe. All of our governments have been elected by the people, and our Senate or Parliament decide to engage our forces in the NATO operation in Afghanistan. So if they decide, they haven't been forced to in the Parliament, your Bundestag, my French Parliament, or the British Parliament. They decide in the name of the people who elect them. So it seems that should be considered as the best solution for us, even if in your position and your position you think it's not.
Ich denke, es muss die politische Entscheidung getroffen werden.
I think there must be a political decision for all occupying forces to leave immediately. Even if Parliament say the war is legal, that doesn't make it right. Not in the name of the people, or democracy, or in the name of God, or anything else. War is always unjust, never just.
Demokratie, noch im Namen Gottes, im Namen irgendjemand anderes wird ein Krieg gerecht. Krieg ist immer Unrecht.
The result of 8 years of war in Afghanistan is a corrupt election, where Karzai only remains in power under the supervision of NATO. The drug supply accounts for 90% of the world market, with the drug price falling because there are so many drugs on the market. And with this war, like with other wars, we must start not with the war situation itself, but long before that. France, Britain, Germany, the US and Russia are world masters in exporting weapons. With all the earnings we get from that, we could prevent more wars rather than create new ones. So we should stop producing and exporting weapons and bring the troops home, and to get rid of troops totally. That's just my opinion.
Obviously, I think the troops should come home straight away. They're not going to succeed. No one has ever beaten the Afghanis. If you want to go all the way back to Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan, the Russian Empire, the British Indian Empire, the Soviets, no one has ever managed. And I don't know what the arrogance of our politicians that think they're going to be better than anyone else. It's not going to happen. And all those people, Afghanis, British, American, French, German, are all getting killed for no good reason at all.
And I think we're going to have to leave the discussion there. The war in Afghanistan that has been such an important topic in Europe up to now will surely continue to be so in the year to come. My thanks to my guests for joining us here on Al Jazeera.